Mackenzie Johnston here with Tri-State Livestock News, bringing you Jennifer Boka of Dillon, Montana. Jennifer, tell me a little bit about what you do within the cattle industry and your background.
Well, currently I'm the general manager of the Northern International Livestock Exposition, which is better known as the NILE, located in Billings, Montana. We are a about 10-day stock show that promotes 14 different cattle breed shows, a pro rodeo, and all based around the mission of promoting and supporting agriculture and our Western heritage through education. But my time here, I've been here about 8 years, but prior to that, I'm a lifelong cattle industry member, I guess you should say. Grew up on a registered cow-calf operation in Colorado. Spent about 15 years in the AI industry outside of our own small cow herd. As we got busier in the AI industry, we had to get less busy with our own cow herd. That happens to a lot, I think. And then I went to work for the Red Angus Association prior to my time here at the NILE. So I've kind of seen all segments of the cattle industry, whether we're discussing, the packer feedlot industry, or whether we're talking the registered industry, or just simply commercial cow-calf. And of course, now being deeply involved in the registered end of it and the show cattle industry with my current role. So I kind of come at it from a lot of different viewpoints.
What do you feel are the major issues standing in the way of fair cattle markets within our industry?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at that. And, that's one of those topics that you can take down so many roads, so many different opinions. Are you basing the questions based on today's cattle market with the issues with COVID and the shutdown of some of packing houses? Or are you talking some historical fair cattle trade? There's just so many different ways you can look at it. Most of all, I think that the biggest issue is finding middle ground, right? Finding middle ground between what our four major packers purchase and the amount they spend, and what our cattle industry, what the producers receive. And I might not say the most popular response on this, but it concerns me if we issue mandates that require them to pay a certain amount for cattle. We walk a very fine line in how that affects other industry, how that affects the look of capitalism versus socialism. And the flip side of me says, man, we got to help cow-calf producers. So that's where I say we've got to find middle ground. And I wish that I was the one that knew all, but I don't. I just know that we've got to find something that works for the cattlemen to be able to continue to reap the rewards of a high demand market, and the packers to be able to operate as the privately owned businesses they are, with the opportunity for profit on their side. And when we find the guy that can make the magic potion in the middle, he's going to be a hero, or she.
Yeah, for certain. So as you heard yesterday, Senator John Tester and Chuck Grassley of Iowa proposed a bill to increase negotiated cash trade to 50% by all processing plants. It would require processing plants to purchase 50% of their cattle through negotiated cash trade. You just mentioned you don't like mandating a certain amount of cash trade. Where do you think this bill is going to go? What is your thoughts on this bill and the push behind 50% negotiated cash trade?
Well, like I said, I understand it. I understand the objective. Man, it's tough because you try to look at these things from all sides, and you try to look at fair market value, right? And you try to look at what the producers need to make in a private entity. And if I have a small shop in town and supply and demand works right, I can set my own markup, right? I can set what I buy, what I sell at. But I constantly go back to honestly being torn, and I don't think I know where it's going to go. I think there's so many varied opinions. I think there is so much desire for producers to get paid for their cattle's worth, but there are still so many cattlemen out there that want to sell in their own manner. They don't want to have to sell according to a mandate either. So, I wish I could give you some light bulb moment, but I really sound like I'm riding the fence, and I don't mean to ride the fence as far as being like wishy-washy, but I want it to be where people get paid for their effort, they get paid for their labor, they get paid for their product without being told how and what and where to do that.
Right. So how do you think we create more competition within our cattle markets?
Well, I think that, in this situation, I think the overhead, I think the cost to get in to the packing industry is such a huge limitation that I think we run up against a huge amount of walls for smaller companies to become. I mean, what is the likelihood of there being a fifth major cattle packer? You know what I mean? I think that's what we need. I think we need more than four, but I think that maybe we need some incentive for people to get into that industry. I think we need to create some opportunity for some smaller packers to be in the market and be sustainable and profitable. And I think that we need to look outside of the box at ways to, it's such a capital rich game, right? And young people can't get into it. Small businesses can't get into it. And we have to create some opportunity and some incentive to allow more opportunity in that marketplace. And I think with more opportunity in that marketplace, it shifts some of the supply and demand, not for product, but for the ability to process that product. And until we can spread that out and have more opportunity, I think we're going to see a lot of these things continue.
Last week, our president requested that the Department of Justice investigate meat packer pricing, collusion, corruption, everything going on, or supposedly everything going on within our packing industry. What's your thoughts on the DOJ investigation? Do you feel it's necessary? The packing industry has been criticized a lot for years. What is your thoughts on the whole situation?
Well, in all sincerity, what can it hurt? If the ask has been there for years to look into it, and we have never had a leader willing to look into it, why not? Now, it may come out that we find collusion. I don't, I can't say, yeah. But it may find out that we don't. But I do think it's necessary. I think it's time. And I think all of us in production agriculture need to be greatly appreciative of the fact that they are going to the effort to investigate this. And then we need to hope that when it comes out, it comes out as an informative, educational process that allows us to then know where the opportunity lies for correction and how can we make it better and come out of it wiser. And what that looks like, I don't know, but I think it's necessary. And I think in the end, we're gonna be smarter than when they went in. So I think if we can learn and gain wisdom, then that's always a good thing.
What are you seeing in your area? How are these tough cattle markets affecting producers in your rural area?
Well, I think number one, that we have to remember that, yes, we are here to talk about the cattle industry, but right now we're talking about the protein industry in how the coronavirus has affected the protein industry, right? Because there is not a segment of the protein industry that's not being affected by this. We also have to remember that whatever our personal opinion is on the virus, and there are millions of opinions, billions of opinions on the virus, right? We have to realize that there are still human lives affected by the packing houses where that disease did spread. While it has hurt the protein industry to have those packing houses shut down, how can we expect that labor force to continue to go to work in a situation where it was an essential breeding ground for the illness? So that's a struggle for me. It's, man, I had an individual I had to run to Bozeman to do a few things, and Bozeman, Montana was one of the deep hit areas of the state. And I was getting my hair cut, okay? So the gentleman that cuts my hair is not involved in the agricultural industry, but asked me, is there really a meat shortage? Well, we have to be honest, right? Is there a meat shortage? Are we killing more cattle than most times in history? It looks different because of the virus, but are we facing a long-term meat shortage? No, we right now are facing a short-term processing plant shortage, correct?
Right.
And so I think our biggest thing is going to be continue to educate consumers so that our protein producers, cattlemen, pork producers, everything down to the poultry industry, so that I can do the best job by educating consumers as to what's really happening in production plants and what the shortage looks like or not, and the cattle on feed numbers and how those look, and that they have the opportunity now to go to alternate resources. I am not anti-Costco. I am not anti-Walmart. I can't say that I go to them, to be real honest. I don't. I try to shop locally. But I think this is a time, in a long answer to your question, that we can really help producers by educating consumers on ways to get their meat in other places. Go directly to the rancher. Ask them what they have for beef availability. Go to your small processing plants. Get your protein sourced through those opportunities right now, and continue to create opportunity for consumers to buy their protein from sources that aren't just the big box stores. And I think that's what we can do during this time where there's obviously an issue with processing. We know there's an issue with processing. We know that the processing plants are shut down for the short term because of one reason. For the long term, there's issues. There are two different issues in my mind. But our biggest issue is continuing consumer education, providing them opportunities to buy protein, to source protein, not stop utilizing protein, animal protein, and going to other sources. And in my opinion, if we keep driving that home, the quality of animal protein, the resource of animal protein, we're going to continue to affect supply and demand in as much a way as we can while the chaos of everything else is going on.
With what you mentioned about buying locally, there's a big push right now to buy protein locally. And with that, there's also been a big push for mandatory country origin labeling. What is your thoughts on that push and everything that comes along with MCOOL?
I am a big proponent of country of origin labeling. I think that there is always going to be need for international trade. I think it's necessary. But I am a big advocate of taking care of our own first. We have the highest quality animal protein right here in this country. It's sourcing locally. It's locally available. It's beef grown in the USA, where we know what we utilize for feed sources, where we know what's utilized for trucking. We know what's utilized for processing. And I guess that's just one of those situations where I don't have there's not a lot of waver in me as to whether we should source our all animal protein, but beef specifically, from the US or from outside. And I think that goes back to the education of consumers as well, letting them see that label, country of origin labeling. I firmly believe that is a comfort to our consumers across the board. And I think especially in this time, and referring to this virus, but also referring to other things that we see outside of the United States, we have so many advantages in the United States to the quality of goods and services. And I do believe that the consumers really are looking for all products sourced here. You see so much now on social media of people saying, I turned over my light bulb and it was made in China. I turned over my coffee pot and it was made in Taiwan and I don't want it. Well, what better time to get that country of origin labeling back into effect when the consumer wants it? It's a perfect opportunity for us to capitalize on the goods and quality services, quality products created right here and grown right here in the U.S. And I think that as an industry, we would not be taking advantage of the opportunities right before us if we don't implement that and move in that direction quickly.
How are you seeing the current cattle markets and the tumultuous times within the cattle industry affect the show cattle industry?
The two are related, okay? The show cattle industry is a very quality marketing venue for the cattle industry, but I think it's very dependent on the individual showing cattle. If you're referring to the junior opportunities, I think a lot of people look at the junior opportunities as truly that, maybe not the basis of the cow herd, but an opportunity for a youngster to get an education, to learn some responsibility, to learn the economics of raising show heifers and getting them back into the herd and the breeding program and junior fed steers and what it costs and how cattle convert feed. And if you look at all those big economic impacts that a youngster can learn, I think those are very separate entity than the cow-calf segment. We know that. I don't really know that I think that pricing as a whole of show cattle, that one affects the other. And I'll probably get lynched for saying that, but I just think that the two markets are very, very different. I think the show cattle market is very important, and I think it's its own industry. And I think those guys using it to market registered herds, registered operations, then there is some tie-in. But it depends on which segment of the industry I think you're looking at, because I don't think it's affecting young people and the heifers that they buy for junior nationals. And I don't think it's affecting the show steers that they're setting up to take to big stock shows. More so on the marketing of registered cattle, I think some of that would come into play.
If you could sum it up in one sentence, what does the cattle industry need most today?
I think the cattle industry needs to take advantage of the fact that we are all on the same team and that we all have the same end goal: to produce quality product. And if we could stop breaking off into segments, taking extremes one direction or the other, if we could look at this as a teamwork with one end product in mind, I think we'd be a lot better off.
I agree. Do you have any closing statements you'd like to make before we wrap this up?
There's a lot of people that are more directly tied to the feeders and packers today. Guys that wake up and watch the markets when they open and watch the markets when they close, and who are working with packers and stockers on a day-to-day basis in a different aspect that I am. So everyone's probably got a little different insight. But my goal in the cattle industry and my goal with the NILE has always been one, to make sure that we educate the consumer and we educate the U.S. on the importance of all the farmers and ranchers that feed the world. And if we don't continue down that path of education and production without agriculture in all of its facets, we are in a heap of trouble, as simple as that sounds. So I really look forward to and hope that this industry will continue to find ways to work together and mitigate the infighting, to create more education for the consumer, more product on an available basis to the consumer, keeping in mind that we've got to make sure that everybody's profitable from the rancher all the way to the packer.